is the Red Sox edition of the offseason to-do list, and we bring in our friend Tim Healey. You can see his coverage in the Boston Globe, Red Sox beat writer, also a great follow on Twitter at Tim B. Healey. Tim is funny. I'll say it for him. Tim, great to see you, and let's get to the offseason to-do list. Can you lay out 1, 2, and 3? You have to only give us 3 options, then we'll elaborate from there.
The Red Sox have the work cut out for them, so it's hard to keep it to 3. But number 1 has got to be re-signing Alex Bregman and or figuring out what Alex Bregman's deal is. Absolutely. Big player last year. Important to keep him this offseason. Number 2 is a number 2 starter, right? They have Garrett Crochet. That trade worked out magnificently for them last year. Now if they can slot in someone behind Crochet, a slugger. They need somebody at first base or DH. They need more dingers, honestly. Trevor Story led the team in home runs and RBIs last year, and that's not going to cut it in 2026. So that's number 3.
Okay, well, Tim, I'm going to start with Bregman.
Sure.
No duh. They need to re-sign Alex Bregman. Yeah, because he solidifies the defense on the left side of the infield. Him and Story. He brings the bat in the middle of the order. And the biggest thing that he did from watching the Red Sox from afar, he brought a presence, a calmness, and a confidence to this team that they had sorely been lacking for a few years. So, yeah, this is like the biggest no duh thing. And I get that's why it's number 1. But they absolutely have to do what it takes to sign Alex Bregman.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because they're going to have, I would think, a lot of competition, right? Look around the league. The Tigers always get mentioned for Alex Bregman. The Mariners are sending Suarez into free agency. The Blue Jays probably, I would think, are going to have a lot of money to spend coming off their October run and don't have a long-term answer at third base. The Phillies are going to have a fascinating offseason, and you can see them getting in the mix on this. The Yankees are always a threat. So there are a lot of teams that are really good fits for Alex Bregman. So the question becomes to me, if, Bregman's almost, very likely looking at a 5, 6, maybe 7-year deal, 150, 175, maybe pushing $200 million. Is Craig Breslow going to be comfortable getting uncomfortable and doing what it takes to sign Alex Bregman? I'm not 100% sure that he's willing to make that move if that's the territory it gets to. But as we said, it's going to be awfully important because Bregman was important to them this past season.
A couple thoughts here, and then I think Kratz has a thought or two about this as well. First of all, no way the Tigers are going after him again. They felt like it was personal. He turned down the most overall money. That's my take. And with some people behind the scenes, I'm going to throw that out there. I think they were quite pissed off, and they felt like the message was sent that Detroit was not for him. And they are like, thank you very much. We're not going to help to drive up your price this offseason. Just throwing that out there. And then also, I wonder if we have owner John Henry or somebody else involved, Theo Epstein and friends, that say, hey, Craig, this might not check out on your end at this price, but we still want him back. Alex Cora has more influence as a manager than almost any other manager in terms of front office moves. Your thoughts on all of that?
I agree. I think any move at this level, ownership's going to be involved. John Henry, Theo, Alex Cora obviously has the Bregman connection and will stump for Alex Bregman among his other guys. So Alex Cora is not afraid to make his voice heard in decisions such as these. So yes, when we talk about Craig Breslow and his decision making and his philosophies and getting uncomfortable, it won't be strictly a Craig Breslow discussion and conversation. Totally agreed with that.
I had mentioned it yesterday to Jim Bowden that free agency is a lot about risk and don't know about his history. How's he going to fit into the clubhouse? Check, check, and check. So this has to be the most slam dunk for everybody because Craig Breslow doesn't want to be like, yeah, I'm the guy that gave Bregman a deal. How could you do that? You saw what he did the year before. It's almost like, how could you not do that because you saw what he did with these young guys, with his production and the fact that he's built for Fenway.
Yeah, he checks all of the boxes. At this time last year, Alex Bregman looked like he checked all of the boxes and was exactly what they needed. And then they flirted. It was going to happen, not going to happen. And it finally happened in February, right? Spring training was getting going. And then it worked out great. And yes, Bregman had the injury, and he's 32 years old now, I believe. And his second half wasn't that good at the plate, honestly. So, sure, I can see some hesitations there. But the fit, which looked great, actually is great. And he was the day one leader of the team as soon as he walked in the room. So losing him would set you way back in an offseason where you should be taking a big step forward.
I'm going to kind of hit two parts here. You said a number 2 starter. First, I want to know, are they getting a second starter to go behind Garrett Crochet? Or do you think they are going to get an actual number 2 starter, somebody who's not even in the number 1 type of category? And doesn't that mean when you add in a number 2 type of starter to this abysmal defense that it becomes more of a number 3 type of starter? Wouldn't they be more suited to, yes, add that ace and then figure out their defense also?
Yes, there's a lot going on there. But when I say they should add a number 2 starter, I'd mean somebody who will be their number 2, not, a traditional quote unquote or sort of more middling number 2 starter. Garrett Crochet is, one of the top 3, at worst top 5 pitchers in baseball. So there's almost nobody available who will slot in ahead of Crochet. But if you can get a co-ace or really the Kurt Schilling to the Pedro Martinez, then you're starting to cook with gas in 2026. And that's what I mean when I say number 2 starter. As far as the defense, there's a lot to figure out, especially on the infield. But their outfield defense was amazing. And their catching defense, Narvaez, was very good. Connor Wong was better than the year before. So when you look at Trevor Story up the middle, Marcelo Meyer playing second or third base, I would think at this point, the defense should be pretty good next year. But there are a lot of question marks to figure out there infield-wise.
All right, and then the third one you mentioned is Ada Slugger, first base DH. Pete Alonso's on the market. I'm just saying, and all the time when you talk to Alex Cora, what does he say they need? Right-handed power. Alex Bregman, right-handed power. Pete Alonso, right-handed power. Because they got a lot of lefties, right? Roman Anthony and the whole crew. But Bregman and Alonso would look nice. I mean, someone like that. So who's a possibility, and will they spend? Because kind of in the John Henry post-2018 world, post-Mookie Betts, Chaim Bloom, they don't really want to spend on these guys. Instead, they look for internal or cheaper options. Will they actually spend and go get the power they need?
That's a great question. And because they haven't spent for more than a half decade now, at least not among the elite spending teams, it's going to be a question until they prove otherwise. So I would think, it's all connected, right? The Bregman question, the first base DH question. If you bring back Bregman, I kind of feel like that $30 million AAV is already baked into the 2026, 2027 projections because you had him for, theoretically, that 3-year deal. And when you were looking at, where your payroll is going to be in the coming seasons, you had him penciled in for that number. Adding another big 9-figure contract on top of that is maybe a big ask for the Red Sox of recent years, but I think they can swing it, especially if, they don't have Giolito making $22 million a year on the qualifying offer. We'll see what happens there. That would sort of be a lot. But yeah, you mentioned Pete Alonso. He is the number 1 choice, I'd say. I think he's exactly what they need. The right-handed bat, plays first base, can DH as much as you want him to, basically. You can move some other guys around those positions as merited, but him playing basically every day, which is something that he does better than almost anybody else in his career, and pencil him in for 35, 40 home runs, 100 to 120 RBIs. That's exactly what this Red Sox team needs because, yes, Alex Cora talks about it all the time. The right-handed bat, the right-handed power. Bregman was supposed to be that and was that to a degree. But in terms of offensive production, Alex Bregman and Pete Alonso are on different levels. The other guy who gets mentioned is Kyle Schwarber. He's a lefty, obviously, so it's not quite the same. He's a little older. Maybe his contract will be shorter. And Alex Cora is quite openly a big fan of Kyle Schwarber because of his 3 months with the Red Sox in 2021. That affection remains strong, so it wouldn't surprise me to see strong interest there. But I think Pete Alonso is a better fit because of the righty stuff.
And you said the 9-figure contracts.
Yeah.
They got rid of one. So if they don't sign another non-figure contract, I'm not saying Bregman's included in that.
Yep.
I'm saying Bregman and someone else. I think Red Sox fans, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Red Sox fans would look at it and go, so that was just a salary dump? We were just trying to dump the Rafi Devers salary, which would not be a good look, especially after clawing to the playoffs with a younger team this year.
Yes, they, in theory, should have that financial wiggle room to maximize. And on top of that, forget the money. They never replaced Rafael Devers, the hitter, at the trade deadline. Didn't add anybody to the lineup besides Nathaniel Lowe in August, and that was fleeting. So, in a sense, Alonso or Schwarber would replace Devers. And that's something, that big bat hole remains a very big hole. So, like we said at the outset, the Red Sox have a lot of work cut out for them the next few months.
All right. How about a trade piece? I want to look at your team and say, okay, does Jarren Duran fit into this future? Obviously, lost his center field position this year to Gold Glover, Cedar Rafaela. Does a trade of Jarren Duran seem likely to add some of these holes that you say they need to fill?
I think a trade of an outfielder is very likely. And if you look at the outfielders the Red Sox have, Jarren Duran kind of feels like the odd man out more than the other guys. And it will depend on once the Red Sox start talking to other teams, who teams like and what they're willing to give up. And that will shape a lot of this because the Red Sox like Jarren Duran and they'd be happy to keep Jarren Duran if they can make the roster and the outfield work. So if some team wants to blow them out of the water for Willie or Abreu, sure, Roman Anthony can go play right field. But if somebody wants Jarren Duran, then Roman Anthony will play left. The wild card here is Rafaela, who is amazing in center field, really streaky at the plate. So I don't think they'll trade Rafaela because as an elite defender alone, his contract is really team friendly. So, I think they'll keep Rafaela. I can't completely rule out that he's the one traded, but, with going with Roman Anthony, Cedar Rafaela, and then one of Duran and Abreu, that's a pretty good outfield.
Hey, how far behind are the Red Sox? I mean, we saw the Yankees were in the World Series 2 years ago. The Blue Jays were in the World Series this year. How far behind are they, and how much do you think in one offseason they can make that jump? Because from what you're giving us, they need a lot of help.
They do need a lot of help. But I honestly think they can play in that top tier in 2026 if they make these additions, right? This year, for example, the standings were what they were. The Red Sox were not the best team in the division, but I don't know that the Yankees were that scary. And the Blue Jays, ran the division the whole second half and then made it to Game 7 of the World Series, so they deserve a ton of credit. But are they going to be that again in 2026? I don't really know. So I think the AL East is not necessarily there for the taking, but the Red Sox are in prime position to make it awfully interesting, especially with the right offseason moves.
Tim, last one for you, and this is more of a coach and front office look at what's been going on with the ball club. We have given them a ton of flowers for how they've developed some really great prospects, right? No secret. Talking about Anthony, talking about Meyer, etc. How much of a hit do you think it will be to the front office to lose someone like Paul Taboni, who's now going to run the front office for the Nationals? It sounded like he was basically the slam dunk to be the guy under Greg Breslow for the long term, and he chose to lead his own front office. And if you want to mix this into, I'm forgetting the name on the fly here, but the new pitching coach for the Mets that came over from the Boston side too. So it sounds like people and teams and orgs are starting to pluck away from them. Of course, Chaim Bloom's been gone for the last few years too. They let him go, but he had a big say in who they drafted, and that was a big deal for them too.
Losing Paul Taboni is a big deal for the Red Sox, and it's an even bigger deal when you zoom out a little bit and look at the other highly regarded employees they've lost front office wise over the past really month, right? Taboni was going to be the GM. He is a guy who went from intern to assistant GM in less than a decade, which is very fast in baseball, as you guys know, and was basically sort of a right-hand man, inner circle kind of guy for Craig Breslow, who apparently keeps sort of a pretty small inner circle. So he went to the Nationals. He's running the show. He brought with him 2 Red Sox employees they really liked. Devin Pearson was director of amateur scouting. He's now an assistant GM under Taboni. Andrew Wright was the field coordinator and player development for the Red Sox. Now he's a special assistant kind of guy with the Nationals. Justin Willard, who you mentioned, director of pitching for the Red Sox the last 2 years, one of Craig Breslow's first hires around this time 2 years ago, was a big part of building that pitching pipeline that has yielded Peyton Tolley, Connolly Early, and some others who are on the way. He's gone. Now he's going to be, it's not official yet, but sounds like the pitching coach for the Mets. So these are all big losses. It all matters. They lost their Double-A hitting coach to the Marlins, to the Major League staff. So it's interesting because, if all these guys are leaving for promotions by teams that are, they're not exactly model franchises, but they're franchises that are, in theory, on the upswing and trying to do things a smarter, more advanced and modern way, then it's sort of a compliment to the Red Sox that teams want to hire away their guys. But it nonetheless is a little bit of a brain drain. And, as much as we've talked about them having their work cut out for them to build the 2026 roster, simultaneously, and especially throughout October, they've been doing plenty of interviews and hiring searches for all of these roles, which are important roles, even if they're out of the public view.